All right, let's talk about step functions. Step functions, which are written this way, are sometimes referred to as a greatest integer function. And the reason for that is because what we're looking for is we're looking for the greatest integer value at that point. So if we were to make a table of values, okay, and let's put in 0. If we put 0 in there, at this point the greatest integer value we have is 0. So that would be a 0. If we put in 0 and 3/10, at that point the greatest integer value we have, again, would be 0. So at 3/10, we're still at 0. If we put in 9/10, the greatest integer value we have there is, once again, 0. We haven't reached 1 yet, and 9/10 clearly not an integer. So basically what we have is we have something that looks like this. All the way up to 1, the greatest integer value you could have would be 0. Let's extend our table, and now let's put in 1. If we substitute a 1 in there, we would get 1. The greatest integer value at 1 is 1. So now at 1, we actually have this value. But you'll see the pattern again. Once we go to 1 and 3/10, well, the greatest integer value we have there, again, is 1. So even at this point, you should see we're going to get something that looks like this, all the way up to 2. Again, let's use 1.9, 1 and 9/10. Our greatest integer value at that point is 1. But as soon as we hit 2, the greatest integer value we have is 2. So now you can see that we have something that looks like this. I think you're starting to get the idea why they call this a step function. If you look at the steps, right, these are kind of like a staircase here, okay? And it is a function because if you look again, you'll notice that because we can pass the vertical line test on each of these columns, it would in fact be a function. But what would happen with our values if we had negative numbers? So let's put some negative numbers in here and see what that would look like. So let's put in negative 4/10. So if we put in negative 4/10, we have to find what the greatest integer value would be at that point. If we put in negative 4/10, the greatest integer value at that point is going to be negative 1, because it didn't quite make it to 0. See, at negative 4/10, we're going to be at negative 1. So it's going to look, again, something like this. Our negative 4/10 would be this value that's in here. The greatest integer we've reached at that point would be negative 1. We haven't reached 0 yet. We're still negative. So you should be starting to see that every time that we're doing this, we're using the value on the left, the integer value on the left. So every time that we do this, our table or our graph is going to look like this. We're going to have the open circle here, and it's going to be filled in this way because that's going to be what our greatest integer value is. And again, that's what a step function is. In this case, we're looking for what the greatest integer value would be.